Good morning.
Good
Good
morning.
morning.
How is everybody?
We are, well, I'll speak for myself. I'm good. How is everyone doing?
We're doing great here, and
Fabulous.
enjoying a sunny day, so can't complain too much.
And you're in Florida right now, aren't you?
Yep, I'm in Florida, and heading back home tomorrow. So, trying to, got a little bit of warm 80-degree weather before I go back to the snow. So,
Oh, yeah. Well,
Gotta love that, man. Gotta
yeah,
love the warmth of Florida. For a
yeah,
little bit warm up and go back to the cold of Denver.
that's right. Yeah, just put away my shorts after I, get on
mm-hmm.
the plane.
I'll take the snow, though. I'd take that.
You like the snow?
As long as I don't have to drive in it. Yeah, I love it.
Oh, okay. Or shovel it.
Yeah,
Yeah. I get a little
yeah, or
workout.
yeah, a little bit of a workout, or slip as you're walking the dog. That's always fun.
Oh, yeah.
Ugh, yeah. Slipping on ice is never a good thing.
Yeah, no, it
No.
never fails, and
One of
and
the
and it never fails. As soon as you hit the ice, that's when the dog decides to pull.
Oh yes.
Yeah, that's always my always what always happens to me. So, but yeah, that's the way that's the way our basset hound is. He just loves to sniff.
But there is some ice that you can look through, and some of that ice is very transparent.
Oh yeah,
No.
yeah,
Ah, see what I
yeah.
did there?
Ah,
Heather,
I
what's our
I
see what
like
you
it.
topic?
I
did.
like it. I like it. Very nice. Very nice.
What's our topic?
Oh. So we're talking about transparency today. And
Woohoo! Thank the
Yeah.
is
Lord.
overall not just one, specific topic, but transparent in the workplace and HR. And, I think this has been a big topic for a long time. I think a lot of business owners and leaders think they're being transparent, but they're really not.
No, it's so true. I mean, I think one of the things that's funny, we were putting together our predictions for next year, and one of the areas that that we think is going to be a big in 24 is going to be pay transparency, and that's one of the things that we're hearing a lot from employees. It's being mandated by state law in many jurisdictions. So uh, you know, so if you're not thinking about transparency from a pay perspective, you really need to, because you want to really try to get ahead of it versus being forced to do it in the states that you operate, and which makes it real difficult when you're working in multiple states.
Yeah, I mean, people have shown that people want pay transparency, and that those states that require it, and if you're an organization and you're not being transparent with all of your pay, you're just doing it in the states that you have to. It's really frustrating for employees because they want to make sure that you're being transparent with all of your jobs and all of your geographic locations. But one of the things that we did was we had a article that we shared amongst ourselves about transparency,
Mhm.
and one of the interesting things was that the article talked about how employee engagement really goes up when there's transparency about what the organization is doing, how you're aligned to the priorities, how the organization is doing, how it's making revenue, what are customers uh, interested in buying, all of those things. And one of the things I thought was really interesting about that article is it talked about how the oxytocin, not oxycontin, different drug, but the internal oxytocin that we have goes up, and it makes us happy. And when that is making us happy at work, we're much more engaged about our work, and we find that increased transparency at work really boosts that level within us. So it really is very interesting about how much transparency really makes employees feel better about the organization.
Yeah, and I think like the chart here shows, employees really want more transparency at work. You know, clearly that's what they're looking for. They want to know more about the business and how decisions that are being made. Uh, and the other side of it is, as leaders, a lot of times leaders say, "Oh yeah, we're very transparent," you know, but not necessarily employees agree with that. So, uh, for next year, I mean, we think a big part of the uh, another prediction is just around. It's going to be about talent, and talent can help you win. And if your talent isn't engaged, it doesn't know what's going on from a business perspective, it's going to be really tough for them to, to kind of convey that to your customers, and the folks that they interact with. So that transparency becomes even more important. In all areas, not, like Jason said, in not only in the side of pay, but also in decision making and how the business is doing. That's a big one. It's, if you're having all
Mhm.
hands meetings and you're not talking about the business results, and being transparent about, the good as well as the bad, that's a real problem, and it's something that needs to be addressed quickly.
A question on our slide here. It says 55% of business owners describe their organization as very transparent, but this says only 80% of their employees would agree. Is that correct? Or did we do
Yeah,
something there?
No, you caught me. It's a typo. It should be 18%.
Okay.
Yeah,
I was like, wait
18.
a minute.
I
I was
saw
like,
that too.
wait a minute. I was looking at it and I go,
Broadcasting my
holy Toledo,
error
that's
That's
here.
actually
okay.
pretty good.
That's Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
No, no, no.
18%.
18%. So I think that as leaders, I think that amongst themselves, they know they're being transparent with each other. And I was just telling Jason, it doesn't matter if it's a CFO, C-suite, but even down to the person that cleans the toilets and takes out the trash, they want to know what's going on. They want to feel
Yeah,
a part of it. And they can't feel a part of it. They don't know it.
yeah. No, I mean that's the key is employees have got to understand why they're there, what's the mission of the company, and why we exist, and being transparent about all those things is so important, as well as keeping people informed. One of the big in mergers and acquisitions,
Mm.
one of the big things that we always focus on when we're doing transactions is, if an employee has a question, you need to answer that question right away.
Yeah.
And if you don't have an answer, it's okay. Let them know when they can expect an answer. It's like, hey, I can't answer that for you right now, but in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to come back to you with a response to that.
Mhm.
And make sure that you follow up. So, it's that making sure you folks understand kind of where things are and that their questions are being answered are so important.
Yeah, what always used to bother me is I worked at a company and every quarter the CEO would say, "This is our most important quarter in the life of our company." And every quarter he would say the same thing. So
People quit
obviously
believing
you
that.
would
Yeah.
you would begin to not you'd be going to question that and say, well, he says that every quarter and we don't understand why it's important, and it really lost any sort of relevance. To me, if you're
Mhm.
going to stand up and you're going to say this is the most important quarter in the history of our quarter, in the history of our quarter, in the history of our company, you should really be transparent and say, okay, this is a
Why?
really important quarter for this reason. Okay, this quarter is really important for this reason. I mean, be really specific and transparent about why the quarter is important. Just don't say the same thing over and over again, because people just would tune out, and
Yep.
it would be a
Hmm.
joke. Like people would go, "Oh my gosh, this lunch is the most important lunch in the history of lunches," and they would just joke, and so it totally took any sort of seriousness out of what he said. And
Mhm.
I think a lot of times, companies get worried about transparency. So, there's
Mhm.
radical transparency, which is, some companies, do engage in, but typically that's not what employees want. They just want to have information about
Hmm.
what's really going on and how to understand what's happening within the organization and feel like they're being communicated to appropriately. Just platitudes and, same cliches like that. That's
Yeah.
not transparency.
Mm-mm.
That just wears people out and people begin to just view you as the teacher and Charlie Brown going wah 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 wah
Yeah,
wah wah. You know,
exactly.
so
Yeah, yeah. And one of the and Jason, yeah, this is a company that we both worked at that we won't talk about. But I remember a quarterly all hands meeting where um, you know we had just gone through kind of a round of layoffs, and then we had an all hands meeting, and it was all focused on you know forward, the kind of what the quarter looked like and what we were expecting, and there was nothing mentioned about why we had to lay off thousands of people. And and it was kind of like, okay, if something happens, you should make sure you explain the decisions that were made, what happened, why it happened, how people are being treated, because we treated people well, that was not the problem. But it was just like, hey, that's in the past, I'm going to forget about it. What's that? No, it's not in the past. We're still kind of dealing with it as employees. Uh, and that's another one of, another one that's really important on around transparency is, if you made a decision, explain it to the employees, let them know why, the thinking behind it, and then we can move on. But ignoring it doesn't make it any better.
No, it makes a
well, if you
lot worse.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot worse if you don't communicate clearly on big decisions like why we did a layoff. That impacts your credibility pretty dramatically in an
Hmm.
organization because then people are going to question, okay, if they don't talk to us about that, how are
Hmm.
they ever going to talk to us about, what's right in our product set, what's not right in our service offerings, what do we need to do better? I mean, people are not going to trust anything anybody says when you can't communicate on something big like that that's super important that everybody notices. You need to be clear and say, hey, we had to let go of 7% of our team today because there were issues with our revenue, and by letting go 7% of our team, puts us more in alignment with where we need to be for the plan for the year. I mean, people understand that. I mean, they may not like it, but being able to explain it in a sincere way is really important.
Yep, so true, so true. No, and the other thing too on transparency that we would recommend is just around feedback. Providing employees honest, straightforward feedback in the moment.
Hmm.
Don't wait to give feedback, until their performance review. that
No
that
surprises.
probably, yeah, no surprises. And if it's in the performance review, it better not be a surprise. Exactly, that's a great point.
Hmm.
But giving folks feedback and letting them know how they're doing, what they're doing well, and rewarding them, in the moment is important. But at the same time, if there's something that's negative, making sure that that's also addressed quickly too, and get their perspective on why it happened.
Well, all these things are really about communication. And so that's usually the crux of any problem within an organization is that communication is not where it needs to be, that we're not communicating effectively to employees. We're not communicating effectively as the CEO to our employees. We're not communicating effectively as the manager to our employees. And so when you see things like this not happening well in an organization, it's because the ability to communicate is either stifled by, hey, we can't communicate here because we're going to get in trouble, or we don't have the still skills to communicate and we need to create skills, or we're just not in a practice of doing this, meaning we haven't done it before and we're kind of scared about it, but let's go ahead and try to start doing it. I think if you're in any of those situations, it's always good to bring in outside help to help you work through those issues and to identify places where you're weak in terms of that kind of communication and how you can get better, because it will help when there's an outside source taking a look at it and understanding perhaps why you're doing something one way or not doing something the other way, and then call you out on it and take the opportunity to have a discussion about how to improve it. So that's why working with an outside group like us is so critical, because we can help you understand how to communicate more effectively.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and like you said, it all comes down to communication and some of the things that if you are transparent as a leader, you really, you build trust in your team, and trust is so important because folks want to be able to to trust who they're working with on a day-to-day basis, that what they say is true.
Exactly.
uh,
Mhm.
and also, you also empower your team to do, to go off and make decisions and do the right thing, because you've got trust that they will do the right thing, and you're not micromanaging them and playing Monday morning quarterback on on decisions that they've made. It's like, no, decision's been made, it's done. Let's move forward, and I trust you did the best thing, because that's really really important. And so from a leadership perspective, we're out there coaching leaders and coaching folks in our network on how to become better leaders, and a lot of it comes down to being transparent and understanding kind of what's happening in your organization, and keeping your team informed.
I think with anything, a relationship of any kind, it's a two-way street, right? So,
Hmm.
as leaders, if there's no transparency, there's no communication, there's no trust, what do you think you're going to get in return?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
Happiness and joy.
That's right.
Oh, probably
Minimal
not.
minimal effort. Minimal effort.
Probably not.
yeah, and someone that's not going to be
Yeah,
transparent about
yeah.
their work or trust, give out trust to you or anybody around them. I mean, how horrible then, reverse for a leader to find out something through the grapevine or at the last minute because that employee felt worried about being transparent because they weren't being transparent too.
Hmm. Yeah, and the other thing too on transparency is there could be a little bit of a backlash if you go too far, right? And
Mhm.
uh, because some a lot of employees really want it, but there's others that may kind of want that, keeping it to themselves, and keeping certain things, kind of behind closed doors. So just be aware of that, and make sure that that you kind of bring people along, and don't surprise them too quickly. Um, and also, one of the other challenges around transparency that you have to be aware of is, it could slow down your decision making. If you're bringing in a team to talk about an issue to make a decision, versus you just making it and moving forward, that could slow down your decision making. But at the end, you're going to probably have a lot better decisions, when you've got everybody involved.
Yeah, radical transparency is hard. You look at it and you say, is there a reason that we should do radical transparency? I don't know. I'm not a fan of radical transparency because I always look at it like the Ross and Rachel breakup, or Ross and Rachel were broken up, but Ross, had an affair with somebody, supposedly had an affair, a relationship with somebody when he was broken up with Rachel. And then Rachel gets mad because he told her, and he's like, well, we were broken up. And it's like, well, should I have said anything or should I have not said anything? And then he regrets
Mm.
saying something. So, that's what sometimes radical transparency gets you. So I think sometimes you have to be careful about where is really the right place. And obviously I'm not comparing Ross and Rachel to organizations, but I'm just using it as an example. But yeah, you have to think about that. And but I do think transparency in most things is pretty clear, unless it's pretty clear that it works, unless you're in a situation where there's things that you don't want to communicate because there's legal issues, or
Mhm.
there's SEC issues,
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
because you're publicly traded, you can't disclose certain things. I think people get that, but in those areas where you can afford to be more open, you really should, because it really does drive that level of trust and openness, and it really helps your entire organization. Everything comes from the top, so the more open a leader you have, the more open the organization is going to have. And like, back to your point, Heather, where you said you have the leaders that don't want to be open and don't want to talk about things, and they don't want to share, yet those are always the leaders that go, why is everybody so unhappy around here? Like,
Mhm.
well, there may be a reason for that
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right.
that you don't want
Yeah.
to acknowledge. And then they're all usually they're the ones too that's when you do an engagement or a pulse survey, who said that? I want to talk to see who said that. And okay, well, also when you're transparent, you have to also work on, you don't want to damage people who are transparent and stand up and say hard things, you have to honor that in your culture, which is really important. Is
Hmm.
that some people don't
Yeah.
get penalized because they were transparent.
Yeah, and I think you've also got to be very, very careful. A great example is, if you're not transparent in pay, but then you have to publish salary ranges, on LinkedIn when you post a position. Uh, all of a sudden, you've got people coming into your office saying, you know what, you're hiring the same job, on the open market as myself, and I just saw the range that you posted. And by the way, why am I paid below the minimum of the range? Help me
Mhm.
understand that, and why shouldn't I be going to look for a job somewhere else? So so those are the things that not being transparent and not having good communication will cause, and that and we've seen that in some organizations that we've worked with where we've recommended, hey, you've got to publish this. This is important. We have this in place, and people will find out one way or another, and that's that those are the problems that you can cause by being you know being limited transparency, not full transparency.
Yeah, people
Yes,
make up their own answers. If they don't know the answer, they're gonna make up their own answer.
Hmm. So
yes,
true.
that is
So
true.
true.
That happens a lot. Usually the answers they make up are a lot worse than what
Yeah.
reality is.
And then
So
gossip
true.
happens, and then, that telephone game. We've
Oh
talked
yeah.
about that before.
Exactly. All right, well, let's wrap
Yeah.
up our transparency conversation. If you guys
Yeah.
need to get a hold of me, I can be found at Jason at thrivehrconsulting.com.
Yep. And myself, Ray, Rey at thrivehrconsulting.com.
And I'm Heather.Simmons at thrivehrconsulting.com.
All right.
Yeah.
See
Love
you
to talk
guys
to you,
again.
and become much more transparent going into 2024.
All right.
Catch us
All
next
right. See you
week.
later. All right. Bye. Bye.
Bye bye.